your last presentation was perfect. You know,
yeah. Yeah, so you know what I did? I at the very end, what all I did was I took off my headphones and I just sat close to the laptop, try to get my head as close to the laptop as possible.
So you're like eating the laptop mic? It worked.
Yeah. But it would have been nice if I could get my headphones to work. But so when I did that, it sounded fairly clear. Like right now, how does it sound?
It's better than it was when you started.
Okay. I think I was talking a little lower. Like I got to talk a little bit higher, I guess decibel, and then I guess a little better. Okay.
All right. Well,
I guess I'll go with
good.
that.
Glad we got that debugged-ish anyway. All right. Well, it's the half hour, so let's get this thing on the road. Yeah, live from Michigan. It's late night with IDR. So we have two sessions this week. We've got this one, which is just an hour, and then we've got a longer one on Friday. And because this one is short, we are not going to spend a lot of time. Sue and I are not going to spend a lot of time listening to ourselves talk. You get to see the note well because you get to see it every time. And as usual, it's up to you to know that when you join one of these meetings at some point, whether you remember it or not, you did sign a piece of click wrap that said that you will abide by all these various rules. So if you don't know what they are, maybe you should go check. In particular, they pertain to disclosing any IPR that you know of, but there's other stuff in there too. And there's all the references, and if you need legal counsel, I'm not it. So you know where to find the materials. You definitely know where to find the Meet Echo because you're here. If you want to help with the notes, that's where. And here's our agenda for today. And like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking. We're just going to go into the first presentation, unless I will pause and see if anybody has any questions. We will do a longer shares thing on Friday because we have a longer session then. Seeing no one in the queue. Who's our presenter for the first one? Is it Wei or Ajun? Okay. And I'm going to stop my video and mute myself, and please go ahead. You can tell me when you want to flip slides.
Okay. Hello, IDR experts. I'm Wei Wang from China Telecom. I'm going to introduce our revision of the draft after last meeting. Next page, please. Based on the previous discussion, we made the following changes. We add the description of the limitations of existing solutions. We clarify some previous unclear aspects of RDRF mechanism and modify the withdrawal mechanism of RDRF. And we add the solution of RDRF mechanism in the scenario of several VRFs in a PE import VPN routes which carry the same RT. Next page, please. In this scenario, PEs establish IBGP sessions with RR to ensure the routes can be transmitted within AS100, where P1 to 4 maintain VPN routing information and RR don't maintain any VRFs. The RDRF mechanism in different devices is independent. When the VRF of VPN1 in P1 overflows, P1 will find out the main source of VPN routes in this VRF. We assume it is P3 and the overflow VPN routes RD is RD1. Then P1 will extract P3's host address and source RD from BGP update message and generate a BGP root refresh message contains a RDRF entry and send it to RR. Next page, please. But sometimes several VRFs in a PE may import VPN routes carry the same RT. In this scenario, VRF 1, 2, and 3 import VPN routes contain RT3. These three VRFs have different maximum prefix. When the VPN routes carry RD3 cause the overflow of VRF3, P will send a BGP root refresh message contains a RDRF entry to RR. Then RR will stop sending associated VPN routes to PE. However, this will cause VRF 1 and 2 failing to receive VPN routes contain RD3. The local determination of the PE can be used to inhibit the PE from sending RDRF entries when the resources of the device are not exhausted. It only prevents the overflowed VRF from importing related VPN routes without sending RDRF. Next page, please. When RR receives the root refresh message, it checks the entry and adds it into its ADJ ripout so that RR will stop sending VPN routes contains RD1 to P1. If the processing capacity of RR reaches the limit, it will find out the peer that sends the most routing entries to it. We assume it is P3 and the overflow VPN routes RD is RD1. Then RR will generate a BGP root refresh message contain a RDRF entry based on the result of calculation and send it to P3. Next page, please. When P3 receives the root refresh message, it checks the entry and adds it into its ADJ ripout so that P3 will stop sending associated VPN routes to RR. And next page. When the RDRF mechanism is triggered, the alarm information will be generated and sent to the network operators. The operators should manually configure the network to resume normal operation. After returning to normal, the device sends withdrawal ORF entries to its peers who have previously received ORF entries. Then the network operation will return to normal. And next page, please. Okay, the above is our revision to this draft, and any comments to our work are welcome. Thank you.
So if there is no comment or no problem, can we begin the adoption call after this meeting?
talking to a closed mic. I wasn't able to understand what you said earlier, Aijen. I'm sorry. What I was going to say though is you have the question adopt as a working group document on your slide, and I think that it would be at this point reasonable for us to do that adoption call. I will say that sort of the traffic on the list previously did provide quite a bit of feedback that looked mostly sort of
we have discussed this question on the list for a long time, and the update draft has give answer to all the comments.
Okay, AC, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is AC Lindum, Francisco. I was going to say that, yeah, the previous discussion, there was a lot of objection to using RD for policy. And I don't see that that's changed. So maybe that'll come through in the adoption call.
Yeah, we have compared the other solution with RD policy. Then the other solution is not suitable for the current scenario. So we still select the current protocolization.
Kiera, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Super. So I think I've been tracking all the comments. I still don't. I still believe RD-based mechanisms are not useful. I think I don't see anything that has been drastically changed. That being said, maybe we can take this on the mailing list and hopefully can provide another round of feedback.
Yeah, okay. I think you can discuss your concept for the current solution, and we can discuss on the main list.
Any other questions, comments? You can take yourself out of the queue now, Kiera. Or maybe I can take you out. Okay, thank you very much. We will take this up on the list. And next, please. Oh, wait, we have someone in the queue. Giuseppe, did you want to say something? Or are you putting yourself in to present? You can just click on the mic to start speaking. Huh. Giuseppe, I see you putting yourself in the queue. There you go.
Hello?
Please go ahead. Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I put me in the queue, but I had to unmute. Okay. Yeah, good morning. I'm going to present the update of the BGPSR policy extension to enable IETF. So next. Yeah, just recap about the background and motivation for this draft. So the in situ flow information telemetry refers to data plane on path techniques. In particular, we can mention inbound OM and alternate marking. So with the IETF terms, we want to refer to these on path telemetry techniques with just a single word. On the other hand, we have the SR policy that are identified through the well-known tuple, and an head-end may be informed about the candidate path in different ways, in particular by PGP, for example. And this document aims to define an extension to BGP to distribute the SR policies carrying IFIT information, IFIT information. And in particular, in this way, we want to enable the inbound OM and alternate marking when the SR policy is applied. So this is the scope of this draft. Next. Yeah, in this slide, we just recap the changes from the last version that was presented during the last online meeting. Now we are at the 04 version. We got some comment during the last IETF session from Joel. And in this regard, we clarified the use of the IFIT terms because there is something confusing with another document that is IFIT framework. So in this case, the IFIT terms is used just to indicate the inbound OM and alternate marking method. So all the in situ flow information telemetry techniques, as also the acronym says. The other comment from Ketan was about the routing and control plane considerations. We are also having an exchange emails just in the last days with Ketan to clarify better. We try to address this comment, but there is something pending that need to be clarified. We got also other inputs on the list from Juanan about how to handle multiple IP sub-TLVs. For example, in this case, we clarified that inbound OM and alternate marking can coexist or can also be separated, can be enabled only alternate marking on only inbound OM and vice versa. The definition of also Jim give a good comment here to define one general sub-TLV for IFIT, and we define the different IFIT function as sub-TLVs. In this case, it can be managed and handled in an easy way. And also we improved in the section about the SR policy operation. So we added more details about this operation, also based on the component, we can say the other document about the T policy draft in IDR. So next. Yeah, in this slide, we just explain that the IFIT attributes can be attached at the candidate path level as a sub-TLVs. Yeah, we also got a comment from Drew that this figure need to be updated considering the latest version of the T policy draft. So we will do that in the next version. So next slide. Yeah, this is the detail of the IFIT attributes sub-TLV. And you can see the list of the sub-TLVs that are currently defined. So the inbound OM pre-allocate trace option, the incremental trace option, the direct export option, the edge-to-edge option for inbound OM, and the latest one is about the enhanced alternate marking sub-TLV. So in the next slide, we can see the details of all the options sub-TLV. In this case, we are talking about sub-TLVs, of course, and of the type of these and also the details of the metadata that are needed are taken from the relevant IOM draft for example, the IOM draft in IPPM. So there is something that is not new now, but it's just taken from the relevant IOM document. Next. Yeah, this is the alternate marking sub-TLVs. Also in this case, this is taken from the relevant alternate marking document, and in particular the application, the document about the application of the alternate marking. Okay, next. Yeah, in this slide, we just clarify some information about the SR policy operation with IFIT attributes. This document complement, we want to clarify that this document complement the segment routing T policy draft by adding the IFIT attribute. So for all the operation, we have referred to this draft. In particular, we can consider that these IFIT sub-TLVs are optional, so an implementation may consider to ignore the unsupported or unrecognized IFIT sub-TLV. So we don't want that these TLVs will influence in some way the right functioning, so it can be considered as optional. On the other hand, the SR policy and LRIs that have been considered acceptable can be evaluated for propagation and can include also the IFIT information. Regarding the error handling actions, for now, we considered it as for the segment routing tree policy, but during a comment, we got a comment from Drew that we have to include some specific error handling actions also in our draft. I also think we need, so maybe in the next revision, we have to include some information also regarding the error handling actions. For the validation of IFIT attributes, this is left to the SR policy module, as it is also detailed in other case by the segment routing T policy draft. Next. Yeah, for this draft, the working group adoption is ongoing. I have reported the inputs from, just a summary of the inputs from Drew that will be addressed in the next revision. So we can, in particular, we have to add more text about the error handling, the procedure for the start, stop, and update, and backward compatibility. So we will complete this part. I could not put the last minute comment from Ketan, but we are having some exchange about, we can say, the inclusion of the SRPM operation. So we may address, we are building the building blocks of the whole architecture. So of course we need to include more details about the SRPM. We need to understand if the real place is this draft or maybe another general draft. Let's see. So anyway, welcome questions and comments, and thank you for the time.
So, Ketan, I think you're first.
Talaulikar, Cisco. So thanks, Giuseppe, for your responses and update. I wanted to clarify that I'm not asking for more information to be added into this BGP draft because for most of the SR policy, what BGP is doing is only like a opaque or almost opaque kind of transport functionality, and all of the actual processing and interpretation and provisioning in the forwarding and all of that is left to what you're calling also as an SRPM module. So my suggestion would be, like you said, these are building blocks. My suggestion would be for the authors to write that in a separate, perhaps in a Spring document, and work that through the Spring working group. So I just want to clarify, I'm not asking those things to be brought into the IDR document or the PSEP document or the IGP documents for that matter.
Okay, thanks. Now I see, yeah. Maybe, yeah, we need to put this in this general document, maybe some already existing document or a new one, maybe. This is up
I would
to...
suggest a new one if you don't mind. And yeah, because without that piece, it's difficult for many of us, perhaps, or at least me, to understand how all of these protocol stuff are kind of fitting together. Thank you.
Yeah, and I see your point. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Zafar, please go ahead. Zafar, I see you in the queue. You're unmute yourself and speak if you like.
Now?
Yep.
Oh, great. Thanks. So my question is that there is a draft, which is draft song OPSAW working group on IFIT framework. And that is an individual document. So I thought it may be better to work on the overall framework before defining the protocol extensions. There are certain elements that are in the frameworks that is not covered by the draft, but it would be better to cover the holistic framework first. And the second comment is that I did notice there is a typo in the adoption poll. The adoption poll points to a different draft, which is path MTU draft. So that may have led to some confusion during adoption. But anyway.
There was a secondary post to that to undo it, but perhaps it did lead to some confusion. But I did send out a correcting mail to that. Thank you.
But coming back to the first comment that
co-chair.
Description before the protocol extension would be nice to have and being defined. There's some work also in 6-man that is going on this area and other working groups as well.
Yeah, if I can answer your first point, Zafar. Yeah, regarding, I know that there is the IFIT framework draft in OPSA-VUG, but you can consider that the first one, the OPSA-VUG draft, is the framework, so it's a general draft. Now we are just building one of the blocks of the, so this is, I think, is independent from the whole framework, because this can also be adopted without the framework, because IFIT in this case is just used to as acronym of in situ flow information telemetry that stands for all the on-path telemetry, in particular inbound OM and alternate masking. So it is not so related with the world framework. So the world framework can use this building block, but it does not imply that if the framework is not accepted, this draft can always be used by other implementation, by other architecture. So I want to make this difference, that because I think it's just the IFIT acronym is in both drafts, but are two separate things.
Different names? I don't know. Yeah, but there's some element of IFIT, like postcard telemetry and all that. I'm not too sure how they will get modified later on once this draft is adopted.
Let's move the rest of this discussion to the list. I think that, you know, sort of there's, I think I understand your two different perspectives, and we probably won't make a lot of further headway right now on it. In any case, I'd like to let the other two people in the other three people in the queue speak first, and then if we have extra time, we could continue. So Gian, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, amazingly well.
All right. Finally. All right. That was a good breakthrough here. All right. So, so I had a question regarding, I noticed in the draft it's referencing the, I think it was in section 2, the BGP tunnel encapsulation attribute. And I guess in the latest version, I guess there was a lot of updates with the BGP tunnel encapsulation. draft that actually in section 3.7 it references the prefix in sub TLB. So I was wondering like how is like it doesn't have, there's some detail that's in the draft, but I was wondering how is the segment routing key policy leveraging the prefix in sub TLB that's referenced, you know, with using the BGP encapsulation attribute. So that was it. Was in section 2.2, like in this SR policy internal encapsulation attribute. So that the updated, there's a draft for the BGP tunnel encapsulation attribute. Like in that draft, there's a section 3.7 that references the prefix in sub TLB.
Yes, yes, we also got a similar comment, yeah, from you. I will update, of course. I will update in the next.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, could you kind of describe how is it referenced? How is it, you know, I guess it's leveraging the BGP tunnel encapsulation attribute, but how is it leveraging that? I guess using the prefix SID, like when it's building the candidate path. I guess how is it? Because I guess in the draft it doesn't have much detail, but I guess is that what you're saying? You'll update it to provide some more detail.
Yes, yes. Because
okay.
yeah, I will write more details about that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thanks. And Zafar, I see you back in the queue. Do you have another point you want to bring?
I do not.
Oh, okay. So I will take you two guys out of the queue. I think that we are done with this one then. Thank you very much. And Gia, are you going to present on this one? Yes, I see you are. Okay, please go ahead. See, we are not getting audio from you, or at least I'm not. Okay. Inan says he's coming. All right, we'll be patient.
Hello. Hello, John.
Yeah, hi, Robin.
Okay. I will ask Jamie use my laptop. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now can you hear me?
Yep, hear you fine.
Okay. So this is Jedong. I'm going to present this draft on BGP extended community for identifying the target nodes. This is a 03 version, and here are the co-authors of this draft. Okay, next page, please. Okay. First of all, a little recap of this motivation. We know that in some cases, for the BGP route distribution, the target of some of the BGP routing policy information may be just one or a small group of the BGP speakers in the network. Some examples are the BGP flow spec and the BGP SR policy. And we can see maybe there are also other use cases which require such kind of behavior. And for BGP SR policy, the route target is used to determine the target node of this SR policy route. Well, for other address families, the route target may still need to be used for the VRF matching. In such cases, using RT for both the target node identification and the VRF matching could be problematic. We will show an example in the next page. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this picture shows an example when node A want to advertise a VPN flow spec route to node B, the VRF read on node B. And if we use RT to designate the target node B. We will include both an RT for identifying the node B and the RT identify the VRF red in the BGP update message. And this message is sent from A to RR and reflected by R to other nodes in the network. But this route will be imported by both node B and node D, because node D will use the RT red to match with its local VRFs. And if it is matched, it will import the route to VRF red, regardless whether this route contains a RT which identified the node D or not. So we can see there's a problem in such cases. So the purpose of this document is to define a generic mechanism to designate the target nodes for information advertised using BGP. This can be independent from the use of RT, so we can avoid this kind of problems shown in this picture. Next page, please. Okay, this is a proposed solution. We introduce a new BGP extended community to carry the target node information. It is called a node target extended community. And the format is shown in this picture. It basically will need to include a 4-octet target BGP identifier to identify the target nodes of this BGP update message. In one BGP update message, it can carry one or more node target extended community to identify the target nodes, a group of target nodes in the network. Next slide, please. Okay, here we summarize the procedures of this mechanism. First of all, the sending BGP speaker will need to add one or more node targets to the BGP update. And on the receiver side, if one of the node targets in the message match with a local BGP identifier, the information is in the updated message is eligible to be kept and installed on the receiving node. If the receiving node is a route reflector, the route is eligible to be further reflected if there is other node targets in the update. And here, the RR may also choose to reflect the routes only to the BGP peers whose BGP ID match with one of the node targets in the message. And if the receiver is an ASBR, this route is eligible to be advertised to its ABGP peers whose BGP ID match with one of the NT node targets in the update. Well, for this ASBR case, this route is just limited to the multiple ASs which are administered by the same operator. For other cases, for other inter-AS cases, it will need some further study. And if none of the node targets match with the local BGP identifier, the information in the BGP update is not eligible to be installed on the receiving BGP node. And if this receiving node is a route reflector, the route is still eligible to be reflected to its clients or peers. The same procedure as above, the R may choose to reflect the route only to the peers whose BGP ID match with the node target. Okay, next page, please. Here we show the updates in this latest version. First of all, we describe the problem case in detail when the RT-based mechanism is used. And we choose to use BGP identifier instead of the IPv4 or IPv6 addresses in the node target extended community. This was discussed in the previous meetings, and also think it's a reasonable point to use BGP identifier in this case. And for the procedure section, we also reorganized the content and include the procedures for both the route reflector and the ASBR for the, we call it intra-domain scenarios, which is one single operator case. Finally, we add a compatibility consideration section in this draft, and we will continue to maybe revise it based on comments about this compatibility part. Okay, next page. For next steps, here we would like to collect the and comments and feedbacks from the team working group, then we can revise the draft accordingly. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, looks like we have people in the queue. Jeff, you're first.
Hi, this is Jeff. Microphone check.
You're loud
Hi,
and
Jeff.
clear.
Thank you. I do find the idea of a extended community being used for filtering purposes that's tied to node semantics to be useful. I'm a little concerned about this being used as part of reflection procedures. I would be supportive of seeing something like this for something like RT constraint, but I don't think I would want to see this as a general mechanism applied as a magic filter at route reflection level.
Okay, I think, yeah, it's reasonable that the RT filtering mechanism can be optional, and we can maybe in next version to say that it's whether to use this filtering on the RT is determined by the operator's policy, and it's also the position of the RT. Maybe something like that.
Sure. So the two things I would comment on is that if RT constraint is okay, there was prior IETF discussion about allowing RT constraint to be applied to things that are not route targets. So this is work that IDR has already decided it's willing to do. My second comment is that if you do want that, your procedure still may not help you in your original slides. RT constraint says that if any of the targets match, then it would be received. So in your example where you had a red and a blue VRF, therefore red and blue route target, if you're trying to do a restriction to a subset, you still may not get the semantics you're looking for. And I think that may still be a problem even if you weren't using RT constraint.
Yes, yes.
That's my comments. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll just remark that the Jeff Tensura says +1 Jeff over in the chat window. And Randy, you're up.
Hear me?
Yep.
My notoriously bad memory is that the BGP identifier is unique only within a single autonomous system. Therefore, I wonder the semantics of when you cross eBGP.
Yeah, I got your point. Yeah. In the beginning, we firstly consider the use case in the intro AS scenario, like the using route reflector case. For the inter AS case, as I just mentioned, we firstly want to limit it to the multiple ASs administered by the same operator. In that case, maybe the BGP identifier can be management by a single team, and the conflict can be avoided. But again, I
Can
know.
not equal must.
Sorry?
Can is not identical to must.
Yeah, I agree. We need to consider that the inter AS case further, and any contribution or suggestion will be welcome. Thank you.
Rudiger, please go ahead. Rudiger, we see you in the queue, but don't hear you speaking. Have you unmuted?
Okay, that's the mechanism. Are you essentially at this point in time saying you will slash the inter AS case? If you do not, if you want to extend there, you have to figure out whether a control of propagation of the extended community on eBGP can be done. If well, okay, as far as I remember, there are very few BGP implementations out that allow policy to, in fact, match certain extended communities and say, please drop these. If you start to propagate such a community, and you have to assume that neighbors may not be able to clean up this, you are opening a leak where uncontrolled control messages may be spread globally. That's a really bad idea.
Yeah, I understand for the inter-AS case, we need more considerations about this, like extended community propagation and the security considerations. Yeah, so we want to limit the use case to as a first step to inter-AS and the maybe multiple AS under the same operators control. That may be maybe easier.
You could resolve this by just using large communities instead of an extended community.
Yeah, that may be another way to carry this information. Well, maybe I'm not sure why the community will not have the similar issue as the extended community, the propagation at the inter-AS boundary. Maybe this can be discussed further on the mail list.
Okay, thanks. And Guian, let's take this as the last comment, because then we'll need to move on to our next one. Please go ahead.
So the use case that I think that you're addressing is it primarily for BGP flow spec for distribution, or are there, like in the draft, are there any other use cases, or is it just really primarily for BGP flow spec?
One of the use case is BGP flow spec. Well, we think it can be generic for other address families.
So that, like, the concept, I think that you're thinking of using extended community attribute. I guess that's with it, like overlay VPN. But if it's really generic, it does sound like using large communities or even maybe standard communities. That it doesn't necessarily have to be an extended community. That could work, and it could be just regular standard communities. May be able to, like, just tagging, and it would be less complex. Versus actually using extended communities.
Yeah, you mean using standard community?
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
Do the same thing. Also, he also makes it independent of VPN overlays, so it's independent of the MPLS, like VPN construct, or if you're doing even if you're doing like VRF Lite but non-VPN, not non-MPLS related overlay, but this becomes independent. It's you're just tagging, and so if you're just needing to tag, you may be able to get away with standard communities, maybe.
Yeah, I got your point. I will think about to compare different options and feedback to you later. Thank you.
All right, thanks for the presentation and the comments, and our final presentation for this evening, or morning, or day, or whatever it is. Yunnan, if you're speaking, I can't hear you.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah,
Can you all
perfect.
hear me?
Yes.
All right. So good afternoon from Beijing, and it's good to have you all here. And today I'm going to update you with our 01 version draft, which we have already presented at IETF 108, which is titled Traffic Steering Using BGP Flow Spec with SRv6 Policy. So next page, please. So I'm going to start with two application scenarios of our draft. So generally, we want to do traffic steering using BGP flow spec, and we are not like proposing any new encoding in this draft, but some operational changes. So now suppose we want to, this is a L3 VPN traffic steering scenario. And in the next scenario, we'll talk about the internet traffic steering, okay? And in this case, we want to steer the traffic from the blue path to the yellow path, okay? And then, so we have a either a controller or any just regular BGP flow spec speaker that can advertise BGP route to the head end of an SRv6 domain, which is router 2 at this case. And this BGP flow spec route will include two major parts. The first is the filtering components, of course, and in this case, we use the destination IP address as a filtering condition, which is nothing new. But for the action parts, this is something we newly proposed in this draft. So we're using a combination of different action components. Here we propose to use three components in this example. The first two is the redirect IP extended community, and the second is the color extended community. So basically what you can do with the two components is that when the head end router 2 receives the two components, it can use it to associate with an SRv6 policy, which as shown in this figure is the policy 2. Okay, and then the third component, action component, is actually an optional component, but in this case, this component is needed, which is an L3 service seed TLV. So for cases, especially in an VPN traffic steering case, you want to like specifically identify which link you want to like direct the path through the traffic through. You probably need to instruct the endpoint router to tell it, for example, in this case, to tell it to use the end-dx function. So in this case, L3 service seed is carried in this flow spec route. Okay, and then can we go to the next slide, please? And then in this case, we show that the component 3, which is the service seed, is not mandatory, which means it's optional, but it still has conditions. So in this internet traffic steering case, we only carried the redirect IP community with a color community to indicate the SRv6 policy. But we don't want to like specify a DT function there, but this is under the condition that the end seed is USD flavored. If it's like PSP or USP flavored, then you still need an service seed to instruct the endpoint router. Okay. Next slide, please. So here's a summary of the steps that we have in this draft. As I said, there's no new encoding and there's no ion allocation actions needed here. So what we propose is generally it could be 2 steps or 4 steps, depending on whether you will use the service seed TLV. Okay, so the first step is that you need to generate a flow spec route with the 2 or 3 components we just used in the example. The service seed is optional, depending on whether it's necessary. And in the second step, the head end should associate the next hop as well as the color community to an SRv6 policy. And then if we have a service seed in step 3, the head end should put this service seed into the forwarding packets, and then the packet goes through to the endpoint. So at step 4, the endpoint will take further actions depending on the service seed. Okay. So next page, please. And we have also made 2 changes from the initial version. And the first change is the handling of multiple communities, and thanks to Jeff's comments on that. So in this draft, actually we only want to support or say we only allow the usage of one redirect IP community with one color community, because we think that is sufficient. For the purpose, or say the intuitive of having multiple maybe color community with redirect IP community, is that we possibly want to do load balancing. But I would say that using only one redirect IP with one color community is sufficient for load balancing. So what you do is that you basically configure multiple SRv6 seeds lists in an SRv6 policy. So there you go. And for the second change is regarding the cross-domain traffic steering, and thanks to Kelly Rush's comment. And we would say that the handling of flow spec communities in this draft for both the intra-AS and the cross-AS cases would be the same. The only difference would lie in the local SRv6 policy configuration. Okay, so if you want to do cross-domain traffic steering, then the policy should be a cross-domain policy. And if you only want to do intra-domain, then it would be an intra-domain policy. So that's it for the presentation. And any questions or suggestions?
Easy, go ahead.
AC Linda, Cisco Systems. Should this be an informational draft then, because it really reuses the SRv6 and redirect, prospect redirect draft standards?
Well, I think it could be an informational, because it's more like an usage of some existing, a combination usage of some existing methods. I'm not quite sure, but I think it could be.
Okay. Seems logical to me.
This is Sue Harris, co-chair.
Yeah, Sue, do you have something you wanted to say?
I don't need to repeat what you said. If an informational draft would be more appropriate for this draft.
Okay, we'll change that then.
Any other comments or questions?
Or I'm sorry, I have a small suggestion. Is it more appropriate to make it an BCP draft?
I don't know. Let's take that offline. I would need to go and look the draft over again.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else has any input on that question. Jeff.
Sorry, to raise my hand. I don't think BCP quite fits the category at the moment because at the moment it's not current practice, so it's not necessarily best current practice. It definitely fits into the informational category and definitely
Okay.
useful.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, we are exactly at the half hour and we are exactly done with our agenda. So let's close. Thank you, everybody, for, making it through another session, and hope to see you all on Friday. That's it. Bye.
Thanks, bye.